Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. In today's episode, we want to talk about the prospects of war between the United States and China, and obviously that war would be caused by Chinese efforts to take control of Taiwan. So first and foremost, why is Taiwan so important to the United States? Well, Taiwan is the largest manufacturer of semiconductors, of microprocessors. If we were to see a Chinese takeover of Taiwan, or a war for that matter, prepare yourself for massive shortages of everything, especially electronics, TVs, smartphones, computers, everything. Massive shortages for some time. It would make the COVID pandemic look like kindergarten. It really would. It would be horrific. Now, we continue to hear about the possibility that China will look to somehow take control of Taiwan around the 2026, 2027 time frame. Is that too soon? Possibly. I don't think the Chinese would be ready for a full-on takeover of the island nation until probably 2030. But then again, you have to ask the question is what would be the military goals of the Chinese? Would it be an amphibious invasion of Taiwan, or would they look for more reasonable goals, reasonable war goals, war aims, war objectives of blockading the island? Possibly. Now, on paper, if you look at China, they are rapidly expanding. If you look at the Chinese Air Force 20 years ago to where it is now, it looks much different. You're looking at the Chinese, especially the Air Force. You have the J-20 stealth aircraft, stealth multi-role, probably more like not multi-role, but a air superiority system. It doesn't look like it is designed to carry large amounts of precision-guided weapons for the ground attack role. It does look like it's designed to go after U.S. long-range surveillance aircraft, AWACS, other large systems like that, and long-range fighter escort, possibly for the Chinese bomber fleet, which would in reality not drop bombs on a target, but launch cruise missiles. Now, the big question that should be asked is how effective are these Chinese weapon systems? Do they work? Right? We've heard about the J-20. We've heard about what is the PL-21, the PL-12, these long-range air-to-air missiles that are designed to take shots at other aircraft from 100 kilometers in distance. The beyond visual range, BVR, air-to-air missile. But do they work? Do they work? Do these Chinese systems, are they as good or are they comparable to, say, the U.S. AMRAAM or even next generation missiles that are getting ready to be produced by Lockheed Martin? We don't know because they've never been tested in combat. We just don't know. We do know that their IR-guided missiles, the heat-seeking missile that the Chinese use, which was based off of some Israeli designs, do work, are effective, but again, they're more shorter range weapon systems designed not for the BVR spectrum, but much more shorter range. But again, everything that we hear about in regards to China is its long range capability. But we don't know how good the Chinese radars are that are on their J-10s, their J-20s, their J-16s, their J-15s. We don't believe those radars are as good as what's on the U.S. Super Hornet, what's on the F-22, what's on, and definitely what's on the F-35. The F-16V Viper, which the Taiwanese are using right now, it could be a very much better system than what is on some of these most advanced Chinese aircraft. We just don't know. Then you look at the Navy component of it. You look at, say, the type of 55, the new cruiser that the Chinese have launched. I believe there's about 8 of those afloat now. Now, it's often compared to the Aegis. It's compared to the Ticonderoga. But is it as effective as those systems, as those comparable U.S. systems? And we just don't know. Again, we just don't know. Are the Chinese long-range surface-to-air missiles, are they effective? And I have to tell you, I believe that the Chinese could be a paper tiger or paper dragon, because we haven't seen the Chinese military in a fight. The only time we've really seen in the last 10 years the Chinese military engaged in any sort of fight was a stick and stone battle, a primate war that took place in the mountains near China and India. That was it. We didn't see the Chinese deploy weapon systems, and we didn't see a war take place between India and China that could answer any of our questions. Is the Chinese military capable? Are its Air Force pilots competent? Is the technology that they're using effective, and does it work? We don't know. We just don't know. And then we hear about the Taiwanese. We hear about the fact that, well, we don't know if it's a fact. It's reported that Taiwan is simply not ready for a war with China. We hear about the possibility that China could destroy the Taiwanese Air Force on the ground. Okay, so it does that. It destroys the Taiwanese Air Force on the ground. But can Chinese aircraft operate over Taiwan given the advanced air defensive environment that exists? Look, you're talking about a country in Taiwan that has a much more and robust air defense system, air defense network, than what the Ukrainians used against the Russians. And that has been fairly effective against the Russians, at least preventing Russian aircraft from operating carte blanche over Ukraine. They're having to use cruise missiles. So in all probability, we would see a conflict in which the Chinese, in all probability, would have to rely on lots of cruise missile strikes, lots of ballistic missile strikes against Taiwan. But if the Chinese were to try to conduct an amphibious operation, an amphibious landing against Taiwan, would it be effective? Would Taiwanese Apache gunships with Hellfire missiles and Kiowas flying nap of the earth out of these mountainous terrain features decimate Chinese landing ships? Would we see Taiwanese long-range cruise missiles, semi-ballistic missiles, anti-tank missiles decimate Chinese landing ships? Probably. Look, Taiwan is an incredibly advanced country, especially its technology. You're going to see systems, if war were to break out, that are not open source right now, that the Taiwanese have, that they would use against the Chinese. Even in a blockade scenario where the Chinese would have to maneuver ships around Taiwan, there's two big issues that the Chinese are going to have to deal with. One is the anti-ship missiles being fired from Taiwan against those Chinese ships. But at the same time, an even bigger threat that, again, I think is not being talked about in the mainstream media is the capabilities of the U.S. subsurface fleet. I think the United States would simply pull its carriers back and would use its Virginia class, its improved LA class, and the few Seawolf submarines to just obliterate the Chinese surface fleet, that blockading fleet. And then at the same time, you have Patriots, you have the indigenous Taiwanese air defense systems that are very advanced systems operating against those Chinese aircraft. Difficult to say. But I think for China, the big question is, does its systems work? Do these, on paper, these fantastic looking systems, these fantastic air-to-air missiles with incredibly long range, these J-20s, these J-16s, these J-10s, are their radars good? Are they able to engage Taiwanese F-16 Vipers? I don't know. And I don't think the Chinese know yet. Are they able to not be destroyed by the Taiwanese air defense network, which is, again, greater than what we've seen the Ukrainians deploy, especially technology. Those systems that the Taiwanese have, we know they're good systems and they work. We know that. The question is, China. Does its systems work? We don't know that. I imagine some systems do. I imagine we'll see their ballistic missile strikes are pretty darn accurate. I think that's a known absolute, especially when we see what Iran is able to do with its ballistic missile systems. If the Iranians are able to do what they're able to do, then I would imagine the Chinese are able to exceed that. So that's a known issue that we can verify. But ultimately, we just don't know how good the Chinese Air Force, we don't know how good the blue water fleet of the Chinese Navy actually is. We just don't know that yet. And I don't think the Chinese know either. And it would be an incredibly embarrassing moment for the Chinese if they attack Taiwan and they find out it doesn't. We'll have more very, very soon. Thank you for joining us today. Have a good day.